Hello and welcome back to Hyperbaric Living podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Masha. Today I have with me Tim Gray, known as the UK's leading biohacker. He's a psychology specialist, entrepreneur, and a speaker. After spending years researching and self-healing his body from chronic health conditions through biohacking, Tim set out to help others improve their own health. He created the Health Optimization Summit, a leading European health conference. Tim speaks globally at many health conferences. He has also been featured in the Times, Wanderlust, and GQ, as well as many other world-renowned publications. I'm really excited to be speaking with Tim Gray today at Hyperbaric Living podcast. Welcome to the show, Tim.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming. I know you have a super busy schedule, so thank you for finding time to share your experience and your expertise. This is a hyperbaric show, but we don't talk just about hyperbarics because hyperbarics, we do believe that it works with integration of other therapies rather than hyperbarics by itself. I've mentioned that you are a biohacker, and I'm sure a lot of people know what is biohacking, but there are people who have no idea. Could you tell us what is biohacking?
Yeah, very basically, biohacking by definition is the art and science of optimizing the environment inside of you and outside of you to take control of your own biology. In other words, it is optimizing your health using ancestral wisdom and modern advancements to reverse the damage that modern world does to us.
I think there are many myths surrounding biohacking, and one of the myths that all biohackers are superhumans. And I always stress that everybody who's on a health journey is a biohacker in heart. Do you agree with that statement?
Not everyone, but yes, everyone is in some way.
So how biohackers are different from just regular folks?
I'll give you a little explanation which will make sense of why I get to my point on this. Biohacking, it's a systems thinking approach. So I'll give you an example. A medical doctor that applies hyperbaric medicine to one of her patients isn't a biohacker. Someone that does yoga in the park isn't a biohacker. Someone that swims in the sea every day isn't a biohacker necessarily. But if you have the mindset of a biohacker, which is a systems thinking approach to optimizing your health, going and doing yoga because you have tight muscles, or having IV therapy because you're deficient in magnesium, or swimming in the sea because it's mineral rich and hydrates you, that can be classed as a biohack. Many people, if they're doing something towards their health, could be considered a biohacker if they're in the mindset of doing it in a systems thinking approach, whereas most people aren't. They know that if you've got a cold, they take vitamin C. Often the cold gets better faster. That doesn't mean they're a biohacker, but a biohacker, when he gets a cold, for instance, taking oregano oil, taking vitamin C, getting outside and grounding, having hyperbaric, blah, 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 blah. That's how it makes you a biohacker.
I see. And as a biohacker, you put together your own systems approach, right? Because I know you also have a course which teaches to biohack.
Biohacking is very fun. And if we just think about reproducing for a second, we reproduce, or should I say we have sex because one, it's fun, and two, because we have children from it. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive, but at the same time, they can be done for either. And it's the same with biohacking or optimizing your health. It can be, I do it to get healthier, or I can do it because I love it. And I do both. The point is, though, is that a lot of people get into optimizing their health, trying different cleanses, trying different supplements, new technologies, spending a fortune on, all these different bits of equipment, but forget that they haven't necessarily got the fundamentals in place first. So when I got ill around 10 years ago, and I started getting sicker and sicker, forming kidney stones and urinary tract infections and bloating and all sorts of weird symptoms that the doctors just didn't know why it was happening. I didn't know where to start or what was going on. And I was trying different supplements because I heard it broke down oxalates from the kidney stones, and that calcium citrate binded to oxalates so that it dragged it out, so it didn't cause those issues, and blah 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 blah. And I was eating crappy food, not knowing that processed food was so bad. I just really didn't know what to do, and I was just literally trying everything in all directions. But after probably 7 years, I would say, of trying hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different supplements, things like hyperbaric oxygen therapy as well, I got into in 2015. I didn't know why I needed it, but it worked very well, so I continued with that. I didn't really understand or didn't see the patterns other than desperately trying to get my health back and fix chronic health issues. After a while, I realized, and it was actually a friend of mine who said, biohacking or health is really, kind of like mimicking nature in some ways. And I came up with the line, we're using technology to mimic a natural environment in an unnatural world. So I'll give you one quick example, is if we are mouth breathers and not nose breathers, which is, obviously far, far more effective for breathing for multiple reasons for our health, or we have bad posture, or we don't exercise, or one of many, many different reasons, we're not oxygenated properly. That could be because of modern day. We then use technology, hyperbaric, to reoxygenate the body, or should I say hyperoxygenate it, to fill deficiencies that have happened over a period of time because we may be 10% under-oxygenated as a result. So having hyperbaric gives you a blast, gets you back up to speed, but you should still learn to breathe properly and be properly oxygenated on your own. The reason why I've come up with the fundamentals is, are you giving your body the basic building blocks that it needs to thrive or operate as it was designed to do, as nature intended, or as we evolved? So the patterns that I noticed were, obviously, we evolved sleeping in a cave or in a bush, grounded, which meant that we were getting electrons from the earth while we slept, reducing inflammation and helping our body heal during the night. And there's a whole host of things for optimizing your sleep. We wouldn't necessarily eat after sunset. And if we did, it would be near a campfire, which doesn't have much blue light at all, which meant that we would be secreting our melatonin, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So is your sleep absolutely nailed before you start taking a supplement? And if the answer is no, then start on your sleep and understand what the building blocks for proper sleep are. The other thing, and I won't go through all of the fundamentals on this, but I'll give you an idea of some of them and how they fit together, is the next one is hydration. Now, we evolved with drinking from springs or mineral-rich streams from fresh sources that haven't got chemicals like chlorine or fluoride or whatever, and are mineral rich, and which are electrolytes. Yeah. Nowadays, we're drinking from taps. There's hardly any minerals in it. It's not structured. It's not hydrating us properly. And it's giving us more toxins, giving us more toxin burden on our livers. So therefore, we're not hydrating properly. And considering we are a large percentage of water, you would want that large percentage of water to be absolutely brilliant, for you to be absolutely brilliant. So it's about understanding of how to optimize your water. And I'll give you one quick example of this. Everyone carries around a bottle of water or a flask of water everywhere they go, or it seems to be everywhere, and it seems to be a trend. And everyone always says how really thirsty they always are, and they're drinking more and more water, and the more and more they drink, the more and more they need, the more and more they pee, the more and more dehydrated they become, because the water industry, and I'm not saying it's these guys specifically, but they know that the lower the mineral content of the water, the more you need to drink. Whereas if you optimize it with something like Celtic sea salt, for instance, that gives you the minerals, the electrolytes you need for your body to thrive and have energy, which also ties in with hyperbaric oxygen as well. Because if you go into a chamber and you're mineralized properly, and there's actually a study going on somewhere, which I can't talk about in detail, but mineralizing before the hyperbaric and afterwards, it actually increases your healing significantly. So if you're not sleeping properly and you're not hydrating properly, and you're just drinking tap water without mineralizing it, then you're going to be suboptimal and you're not going to need these supplements. And then there's breathing, making sure that you're optimizing your breathing. So hyperbaric might be great as a top up, but you really need to be breathing and oxygenating properly. there's frequent movement, and there's a whole host of 10 things that you should have in place to be optimal before you do any of the other cool stuff or start spending money. And that's really what the course covers. And this isn't a pitch for the course by any means. It's get the basics right before you do any of the cool stuff or expensive stuff, because if you're not doing what we evolved with, grounding, natural light, sleep, hydration, having good relationships and ejecting the negative relationships, which put stresses on our body, which ruins our digestive system, which means we don't get our nutrients from our food and we start getting chronic health issues. All of these things are laid out in a 10-day course, one by one, teaching you how to do each one of them properly. So that's really what the course is. And the reason I brought it out isn't because I wanted to do a course. I really didn't, actually. I was asked so many hundreds of times every month, where do I start? Can you help? And I was typing so many messages out on Instagram and Facebook and everything, answering these questions. I thought I'll just put it together. So it's done very well, and seems to be helping quite a lot of people.
Decisions surrounding hyperbaric oxygen therapy can be complex. That's why here at Hyperbaric Living, we developed a special initiative, a free hyperbaric consultation, to see if hyperbarics can be a therapy of choice for you. I will answer your questions regarding hyperbarics, and you can book consultation at my website, www.drmasha.com. The link is in the podcast and video description below. I'm a naturopathic doctor, so for me, it just absolutely makes me happy to hear something like that, because what we do, we have to make sure that all the foundations of health are covered first before we introduce any supplement or herb, because if not, it would have an effect, but a marginal effect. And we want to get the patients, we want them to get the best outcome possible. And in order to do that, they have to make sure that the foundations of health are completely covered. And I think that's in essence what your course is teaching, is to how to cover these foundations of health. Things that came to our ancestors naturally, just because that's the way the life was. We unfortunately have to rediscover all of those and make sure that we have place in our lives for all these things, and sunshine, you know, getting all that light in the morning. We're all missing that.
I was going to say, the thing is as a naturopathic practitioner or a functional medicine doctor or a functional nutritionist or any of these, a biological dentist, the course really does pave the way for people before they become clients, because I think it can be quite soul destroying for some practitioners to have another client sit in front of them and saying, are you doing this, are you doing that, are you doing the others? Okay, go and get those things right before we can work together, because if you're still drinking Diet Coke and thinking you're going to be healthy because it's got less sugar in it, we're in the wrong place, and it's going to cost you a fortune on an hourly rate. Whereas if they do the course, obviously they have got these things laid out, they have a community to support them, and then they go to a functional practitioner to work with them to do the micro refinements, which actually speeds healing considerably. And if I had had the course, and this is really the mindset that I built it in, is if I'd had the course when I got ill 10 years ago, it wouldn't have taken me nearly 10 years to do it. It would have been significant shift pretty quickly. That's really where it's aimed at.
So before we move to hyperbarics, I wanted to ask you, if people would like to learn more about the course, where can they find information?
So it's on course.healthoptimisation.com, and that's with an S in optimization, because obviously I'm British and we're awkward like that. But so healthoptimisation.com.
Thank you. Well, thank you for sharing that information. I'm sure a lot of people would find it helpful. So let's say a person had all these foundations of health covered to the best of their abilities, and then they want to move to the next level. And they're thinking, okay, I've heard about hyperbarics. I'm in the world of biohacking, but I don't really know what to do without it. With it, I don't know how to use it and what it's going to do for me. Because you mentioned something. You said, when you started doing hyperbarics, you didn't know what it was doing, but you knew that it was helping. So I'm sure a lot of people are in a similar position. Could you clarify that? Because I'm sure you've learned a lot since that moment when you just started.
Yeah. I mean, when I first heard about Hyperbaric on a podcast 2014, 2015, and I heard that it's supposed to recharge your mitochondria, and I was just like, I love this extreme stuff, so I'm going to try and do it. And I didn't know anyone else that actually used it at this point. There was no clinics in London, nothing like that. And I went and used it for the first time, and the hyperbaric doctor said to me, your ears are going to pop, maybe, just chill out, don't worry, you can relax. I went in there and I just didn't know what to expect. And afterwards, I felt quite tired. Actually, I had not die off, but actually I was a bit fatigued afterwards, and I fell asleep on the train on the way home. And it would take me 3 hours in total, plus the session in between, out of London. Anyway, so I did it 3 times, and I felt tired after each time, not knowing why. But the next day I'd feel amazing. And I almost felt like my chronic health issues had vanished as a result of this crazy treatment, just having more air. So much so that I loved it so much. And being a busy business guy that was running a couple of companies at the time in central London, I couldn't have 2 or 3 days out a week to go and get hyperbaric outside of the city. So I actually opened a clinic up in central London to do this, which I recently sold about 1.5 years ago. If you live in a city, or you don't have good posture, or you don't practice your breathing, or if you're a shallow breather or mouth breather, or you snore, or any of these things to do with breathing, hyperbaric potentially works well for you because of dissolving more oxygen in the blood. And I'll speak in very simple terms so that it's easily accessible. I won't talk in deep science. If you are starved of oxygen completely, it's not long until we disappear. But what we don't realize is that when we're chronically deficient in oxygen, actually our body starts malfunctioning, but we don't necessarily notice it. And refilling that deficiency. So for instance, if you're low in vitamin D, for instance, you'll be all over the place. Your immune system won't work properly. Your hormones will be all over the place and things like that. That's a vitamin D deficiency from a sunlight deficiency. And it's very similar when it comes to oxygen. Hyperbaric will top up your cells and your tissues and whatnot with oxygen, filling that deficiency in a very basic way, so that the oxygen gets to all the nooks and the crannies that your body doesn't really immerse completely to every area fully to its potential, because it's looking after its most basic functions to make sure that the body can operate. So if you think about a plant for a second, and you have a plant in its pot and you just give it half the amount of water it needs, it will use that water wisely to survive. But you will see that the plant is limp and it is just holding on for dear life. That is what we're like with not enough water or not enough oxygen. Hyperbaric gives you the amount of oxygen into your cells that your body can flourish and you don't look like a limp flower. That is my very simple way of doing it, of saying it. Now, seeing that we need oxygen for our mitochondria to produce energy, if we are deficient in oxygen, our energy production will be lower as well. So that is why it's so vitally important. And yet it's so underrated. It is ridiculous. We breathe all day, every day. Most people 12 to 18 breaths a minute, something like that. And yet most people don't think to optimize it. Getting on the hyperbaric train is a good one because it makes people realize how much better they can be health-wise and immune-wise if they're having hyperbaric. But what the takeaway should be is use it as a supplement, fill your deficiencies, but learn to breathe properly as well and go in for a top-up when you need it. It took me a very long time to understand that, because I tested having 1 session a week, 2 sessions a week, 3 sessions a week, 4 sessions a week, all the way up to 7 sessions a week. And I found that I plateaued at around 3 sessions a week. And I was doing 90 minutes up to 2 ATA each session. However, after I had a surgery that was supposed to take 3 months to heal, I was doing 90 minutes a day, every day for 3 weeks, and I healed in 3 weeks. Sometimes you need that extra oxygen, but it shouldn't supplement good breathing ongoing. That's my opinion.
If we think about it, if somebody has a chronic condition and they might need an ongoing influx of extra oxygen, it's one thing. Or we have somebody who is trying to improve their health and they're generally healthy and just they want to take their health to the next level. Then then it's completely different thing in terms of dosage and frequency and the duration of the treatments. So going to your personal story, you said that you've tried and you felt tired at the beginning, which is in fact very common, right? It could be due to heavy metal toxicity, could be so many reasons why people feel tired at the beginning. Some people are scared. No, I feel tired, I don't want to continue. But eventually you start feeling better. So you felt better and you started experimenting, of course, because you're a scientist in your mind and you wanted to see, okay, how it works. 3, 4, 5 sessions a week, 7 sessions a week. And then you've noticed that you plateaued. Do you still keep hyperbarics as part of your routine? Like, how often would you use it in your own system of biohacking your health and taking your health to
Really
the
good
next
question.
level?
Yeah, I mean, I practice breath work. Actually, I use, just by chance, it happens to be on the table, it's not a plug, but I use one of these things, which is an Aero Fit. So it measures your in and out breath. So I use breath work with that, so I can measure and track my lung capacity and lung strength over a period of time. No affiliation. I just think that that's a good device. So I practice my breath work and I mouth tape at night. So I nose breathe, or I don't need to anymore, but it took me a while to get used to it. So breath work is critical on my daily routine. And if I have traveled, especially if I've been flying, hyperbaric afterwards is very important, just because the quality of air in the flight, you're much less oxygenated in a flight, one, because of the air quality, two, because of the air pressure. And it's very stressful for the mitochondria. Being in the plane for so long. So hyperbaric after a flight is critical for me. If I've had a poor night's sleep and I'm lagging a little bit, then I have hyperbaric the next day. Sometimes I'll work in the hyperbaric if I want super sharp thinking as well. I've been known to have post-it notes stuck on the inside of my chamber and sitting there working or reading and meditating and stuff. I would say I supplement it when needed. It's the same with glutathione. You know, a lot of people use glutathione every day. You shouldn't use it every day, in my opinion. You should use it when you need it to support your body, to supplement. And it's the same with hyperbaric. But again, there are people with, serious conditions that can benefit for a lot of hyperbaric over a long period of time. There was a story of one of my clients from the clinic a long time ago. They did a 30 sessions, I think it was, at 280A. They really improved their father's healing. It was a really, really good story, actually. But they couldn't get him into the clinic so often, and also money was an issue. So they got him to do breath work every single day for 5 minutes, and it continued his healing. And I think it was because he was living a sedentary life. He was old, he didn't get a lot of exercising, but the breath work made the difference. So my point is integrate it into your lifestyle when needed, but don't use it as a staple ongoing, because otherwise you're always going to rely on it.
I absolutely agree with you. I couldn't agree more. I have another story to tell you. I specialize in women's health. So I see a lot of women and I see pregnant women. So there was a big study for placental insufficiency, which basically, if it gets bad, a woman can lose a baby, premature birth. It doesn't end really well. The study was done in Russia because that's where they do all these kinds of studies with pregnant women. Anyways, there was a group of women with placental insufficiency who received hyperbaric oxygen, and none of them lost their babies, and the outcomes were amazing. And there was another group that didn't have placental insufficiency that received hyperbaric oxygen therapy, and some of their biomarkers were actually worse after receiving hyperbaric oxygen therapy. That teaches us it's a supplement, but supplement doesn't, because oxygen is a nutrient. So we're basically supplementing with a nutrient, which is an oxygen. Same like with supplementing with vitamin D. But if you don't need it and you're getting it, it's not necessarily going to make you feel even better. It might make you feel worse.
A colleague of mine, a senior consultant, friend, colleague of mine from London, a specialist in pediatrics and complicated cases and into hyperbaric medicine. Amazing woman. Once told me when we were discussing biohacking, because some people go, oh, he's a biohacker, they don't know what they're talking about. It depends on the biohacker and their mindset. But one thing that she taught me was you can't overclock the body. because if this is baseline, and most people are operating at, say 70 to 80%, they don't realize it. They have hyperbaric, for instance, they get up to here with their oxygenation. You can't overclock it. Now, if you do overclock the body for whatever reason, let's just say, for instance, they do cocaine or, amphetamines or something like that, and they overclock the body, there's going to be an equal drop the other side. So there's always homeostasis and maintaining the balance. And I think oxygen is exactly the same. It's exactly the same with drinking water. You drink too much, more's going to come out, and it's going to do it's not going to do the right thing. Right? So basically, you can't overclock the body. And if you do, there are consequences. The same with anything. And, they say that the poison is in the dose. It's very true.
So what do you think about all these studies that came out about anti-aging and hyperbarics? I'm referring to Israeli studies. They're using hyperbarics, telomeres and stuff like that.
I think it can slow aging if you have the right amount of oxygen, and speed aging if you don't have enough. And the people in that study, I would love to know what they were like. Were they, I would say young. I was going to say young guys like me. I'm not so young anymore. But were they young, vibrant, energetic people that were optimally oxygenated? Or were they sedentary, microwave meal eating people that didn't really move much? I would probably go with the latter opposed to the former. And if you really segmented those people down into groups within that, I bet you could say the people that were more active, less exercising, that were probably already optimal with their oxygenation, they probably didn't benefit with telomere lengthening, but the people that needed the oxygen probably did. For instance, my telomere lengths, so that I'm 34 and a half, I'm nearly 43, and they have improved. If you saw me at 31, it's actually an Instagram post. I've done a couple of them. That's not just from hyperbaric, and I would like to say that the majority of it is done through environment changes, reducing EMF, making sure that I'm grounding, making sure I'm hydrated properly, as well as hyperbaric. But I think hyperbaric for me is a minimal thing these days, because I don't notice much difference when I use the chamber, whereas I did once upon a time. It was, light bulb.
I think what we're discussing here is absolutely gold. I hope people are listening, and I hope their brains are working and they're trying to make connections between the dots and thinking, okay, what else I can do to make sure that I'm healthy and that I don't depend on anything, including hyperbarics. Whereas just depending on healthy habits, which unfortunately as humankind we're losing, and now it's called biohacking, and it used to be called just normal, lifestyle. Yeah. You've mentioned mineralizing before and after hyperbaric sessions. And you've also said that you can't really talk a lot about it because it's a study in the making, in the process. But maybe there are things that you can talk about that can maximize the effects of hyperbarics, like what people can do to make sure they get the most out of their hyperbaric sessions.
It's a good question. Hydrate is definitely one thing, because if you're dehydrated, the body will be in a stress state. Its normal operating system will not run properly. Your cells will be stressed. You want to be in parasympathetic, not sympathetic, when you're in the hyperbaric chamber, and it will help you be more parasympathetic at the same time. So really giving your body electrolytes or minerals beforehand and after will help the body healing properly. I know that to be good. I can't really go into that detail, especially. I'd also say that, things like eating times, in my opinion, I don't think that really makes much difference. I do think if there's, and certain supplements, for instance, for me, methylation is I have the MTHFR SNPs and COMT and a couple of other things. And I always found that if I did hyperbaric in the morning, and I'd had my methylation supplements, so they were still circulating around me, then I found that benefited me better. I found that going out grounding afterwards was always a win. Now, depending on the chamber that you use, if it's an oxygen compressed chamber, obviously you have to be grounded anyway for safety reasons. In the ones where you just have oxygen via a mask and it's pressurized with ambient air, you don't have to be earthed. I found that if you earth during a session is actually significantly better. My non-proven science, I guess, on this is obviously if you look at red blood cells under live blood analysis, you can see that they're clustered together before grounding. And this is most people, because, you know, anyone that's listening right now, if you say, when was the last time you took your shoes off and stood in the grass? You know, most people say weeks, maybe months ago, or when they hung the washing out, or when they're on the beach on holiday, which means that your blood flow won't be as good as it could be. Blood flow, oxygenation, energy production, all of these things tying together. So once you have been grounding for 20 to 40 minutes, you can see that the red blood cells become equidistant. They're charged correctly into those clumping together like this, which means the blood is free flowing better, means that you'll be better oxygenated as a result. So if you're grounding before, during, if possible, definitely after hyperbaric, then you will find that it's far more effective. And if you tie that in with electrolytes as well and minerals, then you can imagine the compound theory from that. Those are really the key pointers. The methylation one is a serious 1% refinement for people that might have that genetic component. Apart from that, really, it's a very basic, it's an enjoyable experience for me, and for many people I've got to try it. They're expecting to have fireworks or some crazy stuff, but really it's just a time where you can turn your phone off. You can be in your thoughts and have, a brain firing, like it often doesn't, especially if you've been chronically ill or chronic fatigued for some time.
What about pressure? You mentioned that you've been doing 2.0 atmospheres. Yeah. Are you a fan of higher pressure? It
depends on what you need it for. For instance, I have a chamber at home and that goes to 1.4 ATA, which is fine. If I had surgery and I needed to heal quicker, depending on the surgery caveats and everything, guys listening, it really depends on your requirement. As I said earlier on, I had quite a major surgery a few years ago, and the surgeon said it would take 3 months to heal. They needed to leave the wound open. It needed to be cleaned and dressed every day. He said 3 months is very normal. I had hyperbaric, 90 minutes, 2 ATA every day for 3 weeks. And I had the wound photographed every day. He just said it was impossible. I mean, they also say it's impossible to save a foot when you've got diabetic foot wound and various other things. It's amazing what happens when you know how the body actually works on a cellular level and when you give it the right building block. So the pressure is relevant to what you're working on. And if it's just for a top up, if it's just to feel good, 1.4 is fine. 1.5 is the standard default kind of like area that people work in, just because I think the protocols that people use and the amount of specialists in this area are very few and far in between, and not a lot of people really understand the protocols fully yet. ATA, 2 ATA is good. Some people go to 3, I know, definitely. But the question is, how loud is the room? So how high do you need the volume of your music? It's the same as how big is the deficiency? How much oxygen do you need to fill deficiency filled? Faster doesn't always equal better.
Or more doesn't equal better. People think, okay, now I need higher pressure, but no, not necessarily. And higher pressure is associated with oxygen toxicity. And really, if it's an acute condition, you probably should be thinking about higher pressure. And if it's a chronic condition or it's just wellness, you got to be thinking about milder pressure. Well, thank you for sharing all this information. This is cool information. I have one more question. It's a little bit personal. For myself, I'd say. I know that you've done a lot of work with biologic dentists, and you're a big fan of mouth health. You talk a lot about it on your Instagram account. I'm sure you talk about it in your course. And we all have these problems, and I'm thinking about diving into that world after the New Year's. Did you use hyperbarics while you were doing all that work around your mouth, all the old root canals and things like that?
Yes and no. I mean, it is an area, my dear friend, Dr. Dom Nitzschwitz in Germany, actually has a hyperbaric chamber at his biological dentist clinic. I don't know if patients are using it yet. I think he's just working it into the protocols. I do think for healing it is very good, very, very good. I used it, yes, but not in my most recent treatments. I think it's a very synergistic thing for biological dentistry, definitely, because it helps the body heal faster. It means that your body's not stressed for so long, which means that you're healing better, and it's a whole sped up process. Biological dentistry definitely is a key area for me specifically, and it's an important one for most people, because a lot of people that have chronic gut issues or chronic health issues, chronic fatigue, Lyme, and whatnot, often do have a dentist. Most people listening to this right now, you can say, have you had any dental issues other than a filling needed? Even if you had a filling needed, that's often because you're mineral deficient maybe, or something's not going quite right. You might not have enough vitamin D and vitamin K. Therefore, your bones aren't healing properly, and blah, 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 blah. So if you've had root canal treated teeth, that's a toxicity in the body. I know, and standard dentists listen to this will cringe and they go, that's not true, I don't believe it. And they just get crazy off their heads because they haven't been trained in it. They will be one day. Root canals harbor infections, and interleukin 6, interleukin 4 have been consistently found in root treated teeth that are supposed to be clean. There's also cavitations in the bone because our jaws aren't developing like they were, because we're not eating such heavy foods and needing to use our teeth so much, because we're not nose breathing as much. It means that our jaws aren't developing the same, which means, it ties into the oxygenation side of things. And as a result, the wisdom teeth are impacted, meaning that they're not formed in the right direction, which means that there can be areas in the bone that is almost like a low-grade infection, which means we're always swallowing this stuff, causing gut issues. So the whole biological thing ties in with this beautifully, as you can see from the breath work alone, and nose breathing, which ties into the hyperbaric, also ties into the biological dentistry side of things. So my answer to this is, if you have had any dental issues, or root canal treated teeth, or metal fillings, because mercury competes for the cell and actually helps dehydrate you, which ties into the whole mineralization side of things, see a biological dentist, a true biological dentist, not someone that claims to be a biological dentist but still does root canal treated teeth. My favorite of all, obviously, is my very dear friend, and I got to know him through the space for many years, is Dr. Dominik Nitzschwitz from Germany. There's also NDU clinic in London, in northern Spain somewhere as well. I'm just trying to remember.
There are a couple of people in Madrid as well. And there's somebody in Barcelona, I think, who do it. Yeah, it's a big project. It's on my mind. I'm going to do it 2022 for sure. It's not a month, and it's not 2 months, right? It takes time, but it's so worth it.
It really depends on what you've got going on. I mean, there is the all-in-one concept, which is what Dr. Dom talks about. Is basically get it all done in 1 week and get the healing done. And often that takes the toxic burden away from people and they heal very fast. But it really depends. If you've got metal fillings and you've got root canal treated teeth and you've got impacted wisdom teeth, or had teeth taken out in the past that need the cavitations cleaning, can be a little bit more complicated. But yeah, typically, I mean, if I could do everything again, I wouldn't have used several dentists and I would have done it all in one go. That would have been my main, but I really would have done it, even though it'd be a tough couple of weeks after the surgery. Red light therapy, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, minerals, your speed your healing up, you won't get the inflammation, and it'll be over and done with. But as a result, I had bits done over a period of time, and that meant that other dentists didn't know what other people had done, and it could have been done better as a result, and blah, 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 and had complications. But yeah, it's definitely a strong place to start. Actually, my course does go into detail on this, of what to look out for and how to optimize oral health.
Well, thank you for the advice. That was a personal advice, but I'm sure other people can use it too, because I was thinking to do it over the course of a year. I'll think about doing it just all at once and forget about it. Tim, you mentioned the course, but you also have the Health Optimization Summit.
Yeah.
One that happened just before pandemics started, and it was a big hit and a big success. I wanted to be a part of it. Somehow it didn't work with the dates. I'm looking forward. There's one happening next year. Could you tell us about the summit?
Yeah, I mean, it's a labor of love, but it's my baby. The Health Optimization Summit brings in the best of health, fitness, medical wellness, nutrition, biohacking, paleo, keto, all of these things, with the sole goal of what can we do to optimize our health. We have 50 speakers, and with people like Vishen from Mind Valley, Ben Greenfield. We've got Jim Quick. Crikey, we've got basically all the big authors, all the big names that come to London, book signings, and we have 100 brands, 100 exhibitors, and that can be from super clean food products, like, for instance, avocado mayo, clean avocado mayo, which, you know, is a big hit, through to hyperbaric brand, red light therapy brands, and movement coaches, gong bath or sound therapy, and all these things. So we have 50 speakers, 100 brands, 1,500 people, 2 days, all together in an amazing venue with lots of natural light in central London. And that's the last weekend of May 2022.
Yeah, I'm planning to be there. I'm planning to be there, meet all these people. And it's so important to hang out with like-minded people. I think that's what we miss, and we miss especially because of pandemics, but also because this is the lifestyle we have now. So it's a great opportunity, you know, to hang out with people like who think alike, you know, who have the same goals, same health goals, same life goals, and, you know, and just be super pumped after the weekend. I'll have the information in the podcast description, and of course, if you just search Tim Gray biohacker, you'll find all the information is out there. It's on the internet.
Yeah. I mean, if people want to find me, the best place for it is Tim Biohacker on Instagram, or just type Tim Biohacker in on Google. I'm sure I'll pop up.
And there's a lot of content on that Instagram account. Yeah, if you just want to go there and get lost for a week, you know, just reading all this wonderful content about how to optimize your health, because, you know, this is what we do here, what you do there. Tim, thank you so much, from the bottom of my heart, taking your time, sharing your experience, all this, should I say biohacks, all this life hacks, you know, all this hacks, you know, to help people get better. And also for doing all the work that you do, because you do a lot of work for other people, you know, putting out all that content that people can use so they can finally reach their health goals and get better. And, you know, hope to see you in London in 5-6 months.
Yeah, oh yes, it's going to go quick.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.